Hello and welcome to another episode of the Coaching Outdoors podcast. I am Anna Marie, one of your hosts, and I am joined by Paul. And today we have Annie Lee. Now, Annie is a larger than life character who is just an absolute scream. I first met her at our event in Henley last June, and then I was lucky enough to catch up with her in Jersey when I was visiting my brother, which is where she is currently residing, though soon to move back to the mainland. And literally last Thursday, I was fortunate to attend one of her Nature's Blueprint events in Bristol, which was a really, really special day at Grow Wilder. And I'm sure Annie will be sharing more details about that as we move through, because it is an incredibly, incredibly special community which she has set up. But without further ado, let us crack on. Annie, please introduce yourself briefly, and we've got time to dig into the details as we flow through our conversation together.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Anna Marie and Paul, for inviting me. I am Annie, and I am a coach supervisor, an ICF mentor coach, and I tutor on a postgrad in coaching, and also I'm lead tutor for a postgrad in supervision as well, coach supervision. And I'm a founder of, as Anna Marie just mentioned, a CIC called Nature's Blueprint.
Oh, Annie, it's a real pleasure to be here today with you and see you again. And I remember meeting you as Anna Marie did at Coaching Outdoor Live. So it's just an absolute pleasure. And if anybody's already watching, Annie's smile and energy has already lit up the room. As far as it's just brilliant. It's a very, very contagious smile that Annie has. So it's lovely to see you. And we're going to go and start this famous first question, Annie. You know it's coming. What is your earliest memory of being outdoors? And then the second part is, why do you love the outdoors so much and nature?
Well, I was really lucky to be brought up on a small holding in the Peak District. So we had 40 acres on the moors, pretty much on the moors, right up far away from anybody, overlooking Lady Bower Dam and the beautiful Hope Valley. And so my childhood was the outdoors. I can't specify a particular memory that is my first, but it was littered with snowdrift, massive snowdrifts. I was born in the early 70s. It's when we still had 6-foot snowdrifts everywhere. And I've heard other of your guests saying frog spawn, toads and frogs. And I remember going to the water troughs, and I was just fascinated by frog spawn and the tadpoles and the growing of them. And I used to make these sort of balls with the weed that was in the troughs. And we were feral, myself, my sister and brother. We just lived outside, and we had huge freedom. And I think that's what I still get from nature and being outside, that real sense of freedom. Again, so many of your guests have said that. And this feeling of being part of something way bigger than myself and those around me. So the expansiveness, I think, that comes with being outside, especially in the places where I'm lucky enough to live, right on the edge where the land meets the sea, and these amazing expanses. So I find freedom, I find expansiveness of mind, I find awe, and more besides that I don't think I can articulate. And I don't think it's about the mind. It's, I can express it in all the other parts of me. But it probably doesn't come over quite so well in a podcast.
Oh, I can fully resonate. Sometimes the words just don't quite encapsulate that full embodied experience. And yeah, sometimes I struggle with that because it's more embodied. It's beyond the mind. But no, I wasn't aware that you grew up in the Peak District, and I could see Paul kind of perk up there because clearly that's where he is.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, well, I know that area really well. It's so beautiful, Annie. It's just, yeah, amazing area. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
So following on, we're always curious as to how people have got to where they are now. Okay, so that was the childhood experience, and that exerts an influence on where we are now. So joining the dots, joining the threads, the backstory, your early career, just a brief insight into how have you got to doing what you do now with this portfolio, freelance work?
I sort of feel like I've come full circle. You know, I was brought up on the land and had such a close affinity with the land. I knew every inch of that 40 acres. And I went away from it. I started work with, we had little ponies. We had like Thelwell, if you remember Thelwell, the little pony. I mean, they were stubborn little ponies. They didn't do anything that anybody else's ponies did. You know, they were literally they were naughty. And I loved horses. I loved ponies. And so I went to university and studied equine business management and agricultural equine business management, and sort of fell into the racing industry, which was something I had no interest in particularly, but I got to do a lot of vet type stuff with horses, and I got to travel the world, which I loved. So I worked in Australia, New Zealand, I worked in Zambia, I worked in Ireland, and I spent about 10 years traveling backwards and forwards, Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. And I was a midwife for horses, which was extraordinary, worked with some amazing full-on farmers. And so had this real affinity, but it was very conventional farming. And then I sort of slid into the world of academia. I knew that I wanted to teach others how amazing it is to work on the land and with animals. And I wanted to really, when you go to university, I know I came out and I just went, well, obviously I'm going to go into a managerial role or an office-based role and get paid loads of money. And my experience of working on the land and with the animals was just like, this is way better. Come on. So I took that role in academia, and I was a lecturer at Oxford Brookes and Abingdon Whitney College in equine science, and there I met, when I was teaching soil science, I met an amazing guy called Ian Wilkinson, who was running a seed, basically a seed company. And so he provided seed to big farmers, but he was doing things differently. And I'll come back to him in a minute. But as part of this lecturing, I loved the sort of the pastoral element. I did quite a bit of career coaching, and I was a mentor for a lot of the staff. And that's where I sort of, again, slid into the coaching world. I trained with Barefoot Coaching, this is 9 years ago, and started again coming back to this sort of quite conventional coaching. And then I started to find my feet and started to be a little bit more, I suppose, maverick in my approach. And coming back full circle, I now work very much, a lot of my work was started to be more outdoors. In 2018, and I'll come back to this later, I curated this adventure, funnily enough, in the Alps. Paul and I were just talking about skiing before we pressed record. And so I took my Coaching Outdoors, And that started this sort of theme off of working outdoors with nature and creating this nature connection. And it sort of leads to this far deeper love and real passion for enabling others to actually recognize how connected we all are with the land, with each other. So yeah, that's a précis of those moments that have led me to here.
Oh, thank you, Annie, for sharing. So, and you know, it's just so lovely to see that connectivity through all of that. And I love the way you said it sort of, slid into that. But in a way, you feel like, you look back and there's all these connectives, and it makes up this richness of you. And I'm seeing the horses, the pastoral land, that connects then to education and teaching, coaching. And then almost this, you call it a maverick, and I think we'll come on to that more, but there's this disruptor in you, this maverick approach of, and then moving outdoors. It almost feels like you've gone on this journey, collecting experiences, collecting knowledge, and coming back to this really lovely place of, of getting outdoors and stuff, which leads us on, to that next question of, I guess, who and what's inspired you to found the Nature's Blueprint community, coming to that very point today now, and your community interest group. Could you take us through that now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned Ian Wilkinson earlier on, and he now runs the education centre, the UK Education Centre Farm Ed, which is all about regenerative farming, but also attracts lots of things like regenerative leadership conferences as well. They are looking very holistically and more systemically about how we change the food systems, how we change our whole perspective on life. And so he was a great influence on me. I used to take my students to see him, and he would always come up with such interest. My students just loved him because he was so curious, and he was a disruptor. And when I left education, I did a bit of contract work with them and created some seed mixtures for horses. And what I recognize now was it was integrative health, but for horses. And now there's so much about integrative health for humans. I hadn't quite made that sort of link until probably about a year ago. What we were doing was looking at the horse as a whole and trying to get it living as naturally as possible. And that's what we're doing with humans. We're trying to, in my world, and Nature's Blueprint, we're trying to remember that we are an animal, and that the environment that we've created for ourselves is so unnatural. No wonder there is such a mental health crisis. We wouldn't allow our dogs or our horses or anything like that to show this level of dis-ease, and not do something about the systems and the environment. So Ian Wilkinson was a huge part of the sort of the beginnings of Nature's Blueprint. The full story is also, I have to mention, the book Less is More by Jason Hickel. And when I read that I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, he talked very much about this great separation between humans and nature, and humans having dominion over nature. And Giles Hutchinson, Laura Storm, they talk about that in regenerative leadership a lot. And I know Giles has been on the show and talked about this great separation, mind, body, masculine, feminine, but nature and humans. And I was really freaking angry, if I'm honest. I was really angry at us, at humans going, please go out and heal me, nature, and I will come back and I will just do as I do, which is, has got us where we are now. And so I really, really wanted to do something, but I was almost paralyzed by this sort of powerlessness, thinking, well, what can I do? I'm not an ecologist. I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not this, that. But what I am is a coach, and I know that I'm great at creating spaces for people to think differently, to be different, and to pop their head above the parapet and start to feel the feels, but feel supported enough to do that. Because I think there's so many people who are bothered about the climate, bothered about biodiversity, bothered about the societal stuff that we see going on, but feel powerless. And that's what I really wanted. I am still passionate about enabling people to feel like they can make a difference. Claire Breeze as well, my supervisor, she 2 years ago told me to sharpen my teeth, and I absolutely loved that. And I use that a lot with my clients as well, but I keep coming back to that. Actually, if I don't stand up and really sharpen my teeth, then I'm not doing what I feel I can do, all I can do. So yeah, there's Grattan Donnelly and Chris Chapman as well. Courageous Conversations, I did their course 2 years ago, and they've helped. They bring in Otto Scharmer's work, the Theory U, and they're fabulous in bringing mindfulness in. So yeah, I could go on, but I won't. I'm sure other people will come up later on.
And you are a coach and you are a connector. And that is what it's all about within this ecosystem, is bringing all of these people together who are really pushing for change. They're all being disruptors. And again, we will come back to the disruptor bit in a moment. And everyone is disrupting in their own way and building connections and collaborations. And that was what really struck me about the in-person event last Thursday. And Nature's Blueprint is far more than just the event, and we'd love to hear a little bit more in a moment. And what struck me was the diversity of people who were there. And I had the most fascinating conversation with an accountant from Stroud.
Scott.
Scott, like, what an amazing guy, really stepping beyond the capitalist model around our construct around money, and actually how can we think differently about that. And this, in a way, leads me on to, okay, so, well, who is Nature's Blueprint for? And then you've been going for nearly a couple of years. How has it evolved over that period?
Yeah, Scott Johnson, I mean, what a guy, and what a disruptor. So I'll come back to how I got to meet him, because I think it's all relevant in this connector piece. Who's it for? Change makers is my is my head answer. My heart answer is for absolutely anybody who, and I am going to swear, so please, who gives a shit. And that's what came up at that first event. We said, why are you here? That was the resounding answer at our launch event almost 2 years ago, was we care. So anybody who cares, they may be already doing the do. So they may be really involved in activism. They may be really involved in ESG, or, transforming their organization. They may also be a conscious citizen just going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I feel this, I see it, and I feel quite powerless. So anybody, everybody, and I say change makers, that's my head answer. So I really loved that, Anna Marie. I do see Nature's Blueprint as a conduit, as a connector. John Alexander's work has really influenced me as well. So the book Citizens, and that's how I met Gavin Fernie-Jones from the Reaction Collective, and that's how I met Scott. So these are all interlinked. These are people who are doing amazing things, shifting the consumer mindset to a citizen mindset. So this feeling of that we have got power, And that's how I think coaching comes into this. It's enabling, it's empowering people to have a voice, to have an opinion that is not just the mainstream. Because I think we can, if we stay in the mainstream, well, we're sleepwalking into I won't overblow it, but a crisis. Yeah.
Absolutely, Annie. And I think the other thing you've got, and I would kind of, is this community or citizenship of we're not alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you and your Nature's Blueprint does so well. Is I come across, all three of us come across people who they do feel powerless. They want to do something. They feel that, how do I affect change? And I think by becoming part of a community, part of a sort of a citizenship that you've created, there's this co-creation, collaboration. People can understand, oh, there are ways, there are ideas, there are sharing, there's knowledge. And I think that's what I particularly take out of Nature's Blueprint, is it's that you're not alone. Come along, share ideas, show other people what you're doing, and then there's this collaboration, and it builds and builds and builds. And I think that's the community that you're building, and it's exciting. And of course, people are coming from all sorts of walks of life, bringing tremendous amounts of experience and knowledge. And so, I think you're right, that is something really, really important to sort of, that you are bringing, out there and encouraging people. So building on that, what is the Nature's Blueprint model? And I guess, how, do you integrate it into your coaching work, how do you kind of bring those two together?
Yeah, well, I am someone who craves simplicity, and I get quite annoyed at the inaccessibility sometimes in this world. Systemic, systems thinking, bioleadership, regenerative leadership, coaching itself. Oh, we can tie ourselves up in words, can't we? And we can really sort of, I think, alienate people and maybe put people off with grand theories, really complex psychological sort of theories and modalities. And so I go right back to, that's also, I do love a good theory. I'll just caveat that. But what I've done is just created the most simple model, and that is reconnecting to reimagine and then respond. So this reconnection, that we are all part of nature. There is no separateness. And so we spend time, and however that is, at the event, it's a combination of walking, mindfulness, a bit of education around soil health, gut health, all the interconnections between mental health, physical health, planetary health. So there's a bit of psychoeducation in there as well, and what, how being in nature and outdoors really does impact us. And then we move into this space of reimagining, and Phoebe Tickell's work from Moral Imaginations is something that's really shaped this piece. And, she talks about a crisis of imagination. That's the actual crisis that we're facing. And if we can really, lean in to our huge capacity in all of our sort of brain, the head brain, the heart brain, the gut brain, all of our intelligence, then, we can imagine our way out of this. And so the reconnect, the reimagine, and then, the coaching, the facilitating client growth in terms of ICF competencies, it's that, and what are we going to do about it? That's that move to action. So simplicity itself, reconnect, to reimagine, to respond. And that really, it runs through all of my work. And I think one of the big things as coaches is, how do we communicate with our potential clients or clients from the very get-go at all touch points? So, in everything that I put out, whether it's on a website or whether it's when I'm chatting one-to-one, or whether it's, you are building trust and you are setting expectations. So by talking about the fact that we are all part of nature, talking about the fact that the earth is, almost a sponsor of our work, then it's going to attract people. I'm not going to spring it on somebody, because that could get in the way of trust in my mind. So it's just being sort of consistent with that message, and that's how I attract people to come into that world.
Thank you. It is, as coaches, it's that balance between, okay, so as a coach, how am I showing up? How am I connecting with my clients? And then, okay, within the process, the experience as it unfolds, what, in theory, model experience are we leaning into? And yeah, I will hands up admit I've got still an element of a pragmatic army officer inside me at the end of the day going, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And that kind of solution orientated, despite what else might have been going on and whatever level we're working at and whatever dimension we're working at and however we're using our imagination and co-creating together, at the end of the day, there's that kind of like accountability and like, okay, designing action, what we're going to do. So shifting gears slightly, and linking to the natural environment. And, we've got people listening in from all around the world who inhabit different environments. And that in itself brings so much opportunity for the diversity and variety within outdoor and nature connected coaching. So for you, what is your favorite outdoor environment to partner with your clients in coaching conversations?
Anna-Marie, that's such a hard question, and I feel it's really unfair. It's like choosing between your children. When I was brought up where I was brought up, we had a view. We had this extraordinary view, and I've always been drawn to height. And so I think anywhere with height. So I said about taking people to the Alps, that expanse, that view, I think is probably my favorite. Up a mountain or up on a really high cliff edge on the sea, I think is probably my favorite. But as I say, it's really tricky, and I think it really depends on the client. I think so much serendipity happens when you're coaching outdoors. You find yourself in the right spot. Your client finds themselves in the right spot for that particular moment. And we can search for synchronicity, or it can just come upon us. But so often I find my clients will find what they need from wherever they are. So whether that's in a woods, deep in the woods, surrounded by trees and that protectiveness of the trees, or the trying to find a way out, they'll take what they need. But from my point of view, I love to be at height, and it's where I know that I'm at most, I suppose I said expansive earlier, and I think that's what I mean. I can see more at height, and I think as a coach, sometimes that enables me to maybe see a little bit more from my client's perspective too. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm so with you as well, Annie, on that. I mean, height. I think it's what's the art of the possible. That's what height gives us. It's that expansive, the art. That's where I was, as everyone just heard, I've just come back from the Alps, and that's that looking and standing and seeing so far that it's almost you're reimagining becomes almost like, wow, you're really getting pushed to reimagine here now, because there's that art of the possible. And so, but you're so right. Clients do find metaphor and synchronicity in that it never ceases to amaze me what clients, partners, and nature throws up. And that's the beauty of this work, that the listeners and the viewers, hopefully, go out there, try, explore, because it never ceases to amaze me what illicit insight, coachees and partners get from nature. It's all out there in minute detail to huge expanse. So, we are moving back to this word around. If anybody wants to have a look at Annie's LinkedIn profile, please go out and do and have a look at that. But Annie, you're very much this curator of coaching adventures, and I'd love you to share with some of our listeners, confidentiality respected as well, but illustrates that sort of, your style and how these have evolved with nature, and, what you observe in your clients' experiences by taking those adventures. I wonder if you could give us a few examples.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these happen in groups and some of these happen individually. I'll talk about the groups first, and that was sort of where I started these adventures. I didn't want them to be retreats. I wanted them to be adventures of the heart, mind, body, and that the first one was to the Alps, and it was called Peak Potential. And I took a group skiing, and some of them had never skied before. Wow. That was interesting. And what we did was really we worked with the mountain as a metaphor, but also that sort of physical challenge, and how we can sort of really tap into the mental side of physically challenging yourself, and how we can bring that back into our everyday world. So whether that's business or personal life or, career. And that I sort of led on to me creating Deep Dive, which is combining coaching and sea swimming. And so again, it's that physical, mental challenge, and how we can work with the environment as our co-facilitator, of course, and how do we learn with the environment as well as each other in a group, as well as with me. And I think that's probably, thinking about my style, it is making sure that it's not me and the coachee. It is this whole systemic, view, and making sure that we're noticing what's around us, because otherwise we're operating so often. And my clients are operating in silos already. We're operating with blindfolds on, or blinkers even. And I think that to witness what happens when people surrender to that co-facilitator, nature as a co-facilitator, whether it be the sea, whether it be the mountains, whether it be that border between sea and land, and what happens, that edge. I think it really helps people connect with themselves. I've seen people come into the other ones I do are around walking and forest bathing. And, I remember one client coming and saying, so the one bit I'm not going to like is the forest bathing. I don't like that. I've been on one before, and it's woo, and I don't like that. I'll come, but I'll probably be quite quiet. And this was in a group. She wasn't quiet. Or she was quiet, but there was a lot of tears, and that was really incredible to witness someone shift, and just completely shift from this defensive, I'm not going to like it, and therefore I'm not going to even open up. And within the group, such trust had been built. And also bringing in that it's not just us, it's not just me, it's about the environment. She allowed herself to really feel what was there, the other energies that were around us. And I've seen that probably on most of my adventures with most of my clients, is that surrender to the feelings and surrender to the power of what's around us. So co-creator, co-facilitator, that's how I work. And I think that helps build that nature connectivity in all that we do.
The word adventure in comparison to the word retreat, and just to anybody who's listening in, what does that bring up for you, going on a retreat or going on an adventure, and how does that land, inspire? What are you attracted to? And it just comes back to that, the language, the messaging, when we're really thinking about, well, who am I as a coach? What is my coaching style? What is my philosophy? Who do I want to work with? Do I want to work with people who want to go on a retreat, or do I want to work with people who want to go on an adventure? And again, it's just interesting, just kind of teasing these things apart, because words are powerful, and yet there is so much more beyond the words. Yeah, but another word that we've been bandying around a little bit in our conversation is being a disruptor. And on your website, you describe yourself as a chief disruptor. Get the words out. So how do you bring an element of this into your coaching supervision? So we'll go with the supervision angle.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I have to give full sort of kudos to my supervisor, and I have a number, but Claire Breeze particularly, who is a Zen Buddhist, and so my group supervision is Supervision, and we are the Awakening group, and I'm with a fabulous group from all over the world, and that sort of principle, or the principles, inform my supervision. So it's all made up is one of Claire's favourite lines. It's all made up. It's all a human construct. That's another friend of mine, Emma Slade, who's a Bhutanese Buddhist, will always say it's a human construct. So that's how often I will bring in, actually, I'm an ICF geek, of course I am. I'm a mentor coach. I teach on an ICF accredited course, and I love to pull them apart. I love to pull coaching apart, because I think it's right to. I think we need to keep coming back to, what are we doing? Actually, what space are we creating? What is coaching? What do we believe coaching is? What's its role? And so through those questions and that curiosity, it can disrupt someone's thinking. It can disrupt the mainstream view of these are the competencies, these are the rules. And what are your rules? What are your rules in the co-created space of you and your client? What are your rules? What are your boundaries, competencies? So that's one element of the disruptor, and I think it is purely that curiosity, the questioning of the normal, the questioning of the assumptions, especially around the environment context, the systemic context. So when looking at the client, it's so the coach's client, we're looking at, and what else is unseen around that client's world. And I think that helps to disrupt some of that. Well, this is the model that I need to use. And it's all about the individual. It's all about the individual, because I don't believe that. And I think that's something that coaching needs to look at. I think we are looking at, is that there are wider systems at play than just the individual is in charge of how they respond and react all the time. Because I just don't think that's true. So that's the bigger context of the disruptor as well.
Yeah, Annie, that's great. And you know, I'm already struck and my mind's racing away with you know, you've questioned and answered some questions that I'm sure many of our listeners, please listeners, you know, give us some comments and stuff on, because it is that, you know, ultimately when we look at, you know, the individual, there are teams of teams. We are living, nature is within us right now. We have nature to right at this moment in us. We are nature. Where are the boundaries? What are the constructs that either we constructed as humans, you know, and you're right to challenge. You're right to, I think, you know, always keep questioning, because we have to evolve. And, you know, coaching wasn't a thing, you know, 20 odd years ago. Team coaching is relatively still new. And, you know, that doesn't mean to say that, you know, and nature and working with nature, in nature, for nature is also fairly new. So we've got to keep challenging. We've got to keep, you know, questioning where we're taking this. And my mind comes back to the boundaries that, you know, my wife and we have horses, and I love something you said earlier, that our horses take themselves in and out of the stable. We don't go and collect them, and you'll know what I'm on about, Annie. They have a free open, they take themselves into the stable to eat and sleep and do whatever they want, or they go outside. And so we're not applying those constructs and you know, those boundaries. They're doing what they want, when they want, how they want in nature. And sometimes perhaps we should think about those metaphors around perhaps what are we being asked to do, but there's these shackles or constructs that we've been perhaps push away. And I love it. I love all that disrupting, and it's great to bring that into your supervision. And you know, as I say, you know, try to find that, perhaps if everybody can, around how do you keep pushing the boundaries. So brings us on to our next question, Annie, that what's the biggest challenge that you've faced in coaching outdoors, and how did you overcome it?
I mean, there are the obvious ones, aren't there, of losing signal, needing the loo, either you or the client, and there's no loo around. So that there are some practical ones. And I think honestly, I can't find any big fat challenges that we haven't been able to overcome. If there is something that maybe, I don't know, blocking someone's ability to find any synchronicity or any metaphor, or, you know, then we roll with it. Then that's okay. It's like any coaching space. We roll with it. I mean, the biggest thing for me, honestly, was when we were skiing and really worrying about people getting down the frickin' mountain safely. So I think safety, probably. Equally, I'm quite a risk taker, otherwise I wouldn't have done that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't tend to look at the challenges as really big problems. I tend to go, you know, so we'll find a way. So it probably isn't very helpful for your listeners, but yeah, I can't think of anything that was really insurmountable, or that we couldn't get around by co-creating and having that conversation. I'm sort of reminded of a really, on the ICF, and this is so geeky, on the ICF, one of the ethics training courses, there's a great phrase that I picked up, and I can't remember who said it, but as long as we communicate often and deeply with our clients, then we're going to be okay ethically. And I think that's always my mantra. As long as I'm talking with the client, then there's nothing that's insurmountable. There's nothing actually that's a real challenge. I think the challenges are there that we put there as disruptions, as you know, to our previous conversation.
Mm.
They're always used as learning.
And your answer in itself, and I'm curious as to what our listeners take away, is valuable. And when I talk to coaches who are interested about stepping into this world, the challenges are constructs in their minds.
Yeah.
And we can all build up challenges and barriers and obstacles and talk ourselves in and out of anything. And actually, once you go with the flow and keep the conversation going, actually the challenge becomes a part of the experience.
Yeah.
And I just want to really draw on the word you used around risk. And what is your relationship with risk?
Yes.
And I'd really encourage everyone to reflect on that, because we all have different levels of risk based on our experience, our skills, or just actually how we're feeling and showing up in that day. Sometimes someone might be absolutely gunning for it and like, yeah, bring it on, I want a challenge. And then other times it's like, oh, feeling a little bit fragile, like just need a little bit of a safe space. So that actually being able to adapt to that. And yeah, the practicalities. And again, that is something that when people are stepping into this area, it's the practicalities that kind of come through. And yeah, I'm sure we've all had a wild wee at some point in the day. So, Annie, what does the future hold for you?
I mean, I describe myself as 3 words. I describe myself usually when I'm speaking to, prospective clients, or just describing myself as a coach, supervisor, facilitator, and they're eclectic, i.e. I pull from lots of different modalities: positive psychology, nature-connectedness, TA, all of those sorts of things. Overt, i.e. I'm what you see is what you get, and I'm very honest. And the other one is emergent. And really, that emergent piece is how I see the whole of my career too, and the direction. I have no idea. It's evolving. And I love that evolution sort of process. Let's see. I know I want Nature's Blueprint to be more of what I do. We've just, as on the back of the Bristol event, we've created, or that actually I haven't at all, the members have created a Bristol in-person hub. And I think the in-person piece is, when I get back to Devon, I want more in person. I feel it's so hugely important for me as a human being, coming back to that, the environment and the sort of what we actually need as an animal. And I believe it's the right thing for us as human beings. More in person, more adventures, more wildness, I think. I'm hoping to be collaborating with some mountain leaders and do some real different types of adventures, combining swimming and walking and wild camping and things like that. I'd love to do that. Nature's Blueprint initially was an immersion, a 3-day immersion. That's how I created it initially. And then we went, well, we better get some people who are into that first, and let's do a day instead of a 3-day. But that'll come. I think the longer sort of 3-day, 4-day immersion will come. And I'm currently just coming to the end of a level 3 master coach in ecosystemic coaching with the brilliant Lilith Flanagan, and that is shaping my work as well. So going for my MCC in the summer, and really hoping to build all of that into more of my work. So yeah, making sure Nature's Blueprint and coaching is as accessible as possible as well. That's a mission for me. I know, and we all know, that coaching has a bias towards white, middle class, people who are well educated. I suppose we could use the word privilege. And I think I really am passionate and hell-bent on making it as accessible as possible to marginalised communities, people who would not normally have access to coaching and experiences such as Nature's Blueprint and Nature Connection. So when I said emergent and evolving, I do have some things as well in the pipeline.
Absolutely. Annie, that's fantastic. And again, as you say, that emergence keeps going. Already some of the things you've just articulated, Devon, your MCC, the summer, there's still this emergence going on. And there's a positivity about you, about your community, about citizenship. And Anna-Marie and I would very much encourage our listeners, absolutely, Bristol, inner city conurbations, nature is out there. We don't have to have huge immersion in heading off to Exmoor or Dartmoor or where all the peaks where I live. Nature can be found, and Anna-Marie and I are working with and talking to people who are actively writing and talking about working in grey space or towns and urban spaces, and we want everyone to understand that nature is where you find it, and it's right there in your window box or your balcony, or it's all those things as well. And so I love your comments about in person. I think these last few years, if anything, they've shown us is we are nature's in us. And when we used to walk on the savannah in groups, grazing and finding life was connected. We were connected, and I think sometimes it's great to get together, and there's nothing like it. You just can't beat being together and getting that embodied connection. And I would encourage as many of us to do that as we can. It's something amazing about that. So I think you're absolutely right. So how do you resource yourself, Annie, in turn, so that you can support your clients? What is that inner, I call it restoration, restoring, refueling, and relaxing? Tell us about how Annie does that.
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to do is be really upfront and say, I don't always get that right at all. And I think people can look at, I don't know, people like me, who's generally comes across as really positive, and I am, and go, oh, she's got it completely right. And I don't know anyone who does. So that's the first myth buster, I think. But what I do is, and I know when I don't, is a daily practice of meditation. And yeah, sometimes I don't, and I notice. So daily practice of meditation, but also daily practice. Behind me is the headland, and I'm so lucky to have it on my doorstep, and it's the most extraordinary place daily out there. And I hug my tree. It's got three I'll put a picture at some point of my tree, but I don't want to share it yet. It's got three big trunks, and I do something different to each part of the tree. So that's every day. I will have a grounding of actually connecting with that tree, and the herons and the buzzards and the oyster catchers and things like that. It's really, really important to me. And then that's on a daily basis. But sea swimming, not daily, but I love sea swimming, the cold. And also I do try, if I can, to go on an in-person adventure or retreat every year. I haven't got to one in 24, but hopefully I will be doing one. And that's places like Kabila in Cornwall, which is the most extraordinary place that has the 1,000-year trust, I think it is, temperate rainforest. Oh, it's stunning and very much full of really extraordinary oak trees and ancient woodland. And then Sharpham meditation, so going on Sharpham, a retreat at Sharpham House, again, Devon, sort of Totnes area. So the place matters to me and what they stand for. And I go off social media every couple of months for a couple of months. That's really important for me, because the world that I inhabit, climate, coaching, supervision, biodiversity, they are full on. And I can certainly, what I consume can be overwhelming, and I feel it. And so I have to take myself away from that. So regular breaks off LinkedIn, it's really the only social media that I consume, but it still can get too much. So that's really important to me, and that's something I've been doing for a number of years now. Yeah, it's important, and I don't always get it right.
And I'll admit as well, I don't always get it right, and I'm sure Paul can put his hands up and go, I don't always get it right. You know, we're all very much work in practice. And you know, for me, this week's been tough, and I took myself off for a sauna at lunchtime.
Yes,
because I needed it, and the heat and the cold therapy for me, it just shifts something within my system in a different way. And I definitely feel better because of it. And just anyone who's listening in, really think about, how do you resource yourself? And it's daily, it's weekly, it's annual. We need to have, particularly when you're holding space for others and exposing yourself to big disruptive, challenging concepts, changing systems, and the crisis that we are in on so many different levels. You know, as an individual, it's a lot on your nervous system. So how do you regulate that and bring it back? So Annie, resources, and you have peppered the podcast with so many different names, which is amazing. And if you're listening in, I would definitely encourage you to go back to listen to, who was it, Grattan's podcast. He's been on the show. Giles Hutchinson, he's been on the show. I know we were talking about Tabby beforehand.
Yes.
So the three of them have been guests. So again, it is this network. But anything else, any other books, podcasts, individuals who you've missed, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I two really spring to mind, and that's Active Hope by Joanna Macy. A really beautiful book. And Chris Johnson, actually, Joanna Macy and Chris Johnson, who is, you know, amazing in the positive psychology, but also in this area. So he blends positive psychology with almost activism, and the work that reconnects is Joanna Macy's work. So that Active Hope as a book, I couldn't recommend highly enough. And I'm going a little bit off piste with both of these, because they're not coaching per se. But I think it's really important that we have this wider perspective, this more systemic perspective. So Braiding Sweetgrass is the other one, which won't come as a surprise to Anna Marie, because I peppered the day on Thursday with quotes from it. And that's Robin Wall Kimmerer, or anything by her. Indigenous wisdom. We have so much to learn from our ancestors and the people that are still in touch with those ancestral roots. I mean, I would say any sort of poetry by Wendell Berry or Mary Oliver, and then Sharon Blackie as well. Love the mythology work as well, and that natureconnectedness. Look at that! Anna Marie has just literally put the Rooted Woman Oracle book up on the screen. So yeah, beautiful. And I think that's it. I've given lots of other ones, like Citizens, John Alexander, but yeah, I think one of the problems is that we can get overwhelmed with how much is out there too. So take those with a pinch of salt. They're just the ones that I really loved.
No, thank you, Annie. They're brilliant. So many of those are so good. And And I think, you make a good point there at the end is, there is just so much out there. Find your thing, find what really talks and speaks to you. And, don't be overwhelmed by so much that is out there, but try to find, something that speaks to you at the moment. And that's important, I think. So thank you so much, Annie, for those. We're coming towards the end of our lovely, conversation and speaking in time with you, Annie. And so we always allow at the end is how do people, because there's no doubt people are going to want to find out more about you, and how do they get in touch with you? If you could share.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. For how long, I don't know. I may be off for a couple of months soon. It depends what happens in the world. But yeah, LinkedIn, Annie Lee, and naturesblueprint.org and annieleeassociates.com are the websites. And yeah, really happy to hear from anybody. I think that community connection, connectivity is just so important. So whether it's a cuppa, that would be great. Whether you want to pick my brains, no problem. If you're interested in Nature's Blueprint, then great. Yeah.
And we're always blown away by the generosity of our guests who do make space and time for people who do reach out. And that ultimately is what it's all about. This whole podcast is to support people take their practice outdoors and connect with nature in whatever way that works with you and your experience and your skills and intuitively feels right. And our guests are just phenomenal individuals. And reach out to Annie, let her know what resonated with you, what questions have you got for her, have a conversation. Wow, what a treat. This has definitely lifted my day, I have to say. It's been a little oasis spending time with you both. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Annie, you have been on our radar for a while, so glad to have pinned you down and hope to have more conversations and partnerships in the future, whatever that might be. And listener, thank you for taking the time, making the space to listen in, whether you're out for a walk, whether you're driving, whether you're doing the cleaning, the ironing. Podcasts are super accessible for whatever you are doing. And if you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you are a multiple listener, welcome back, and thank you for sticking with us. As you may know, this is series 9, so there are many hours to listen to from other guests. So do take a pick and go and check out our other series, other episodes. Clearly, we cannot have an episode without mentioning our event at Henley, because it is our flagship event, which is taking place in June. Tickets are on sale now, and the lineup is phenomenal. I literally get like goosebumps looking and reading through the different titles and the different sessions that are on offer. It's going to be a really hard choice making a decision, because you just want to go to them all. And the fact that it's a 2-day event as well, we're really ensuring that the in-betweeny space is going to be relaxed. There's going to be space for conversations. It's all about the connections and just getting to know each other. And that's it for today. Thank you. Enjoy
thank you.
the time that lies ahead and whatever you have in store for the rest of the day. And look forward to seeing you on another podcast episode soon.
So if you enjoyed what you've heard, like it, share across your network, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and LinkedIn community page, the Coaching Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks so much in advance for your support.